Here's every cheating scandal in NFL history. Let's start with a crazy one. Getting paid to injure players. The Saints bounty scandal shook the entire league. Reports revealed that between 22 and 27 players were involved in a system where defenders earned payouts for big hits. Card-offs, where a player was removed on a stretcher, earned $1,000. Knockouts, where a player couldn't return, paid $1,500. These amounts doubled or tripled in the playoffs. Jonathan Vilma even offered $10,000 to take out Brett Favre in the NFC Championship. The Saints targeted stars like Kurt Warner, Aaron Rodgers, and Cam Newton. Investigators uncovered 18,000 documents proving payments, with contributions coming from players and coaches. The NFL handed down some of the harshest punishments ever. Head coach Sean Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season. Greg Williams, the mastermind, was banned indefinitely. The Saints lost $500,000 and 2 second-round draft picks. But after all that, former Commissioner Paul Tagliabue overturned the player suspensions, ruling the coaches were mainly responsible. But how about this? In 2015, the Deflategate scandal rocked the NFL. Reports claim Tom Brady ordered footballs deflated during the Patriots' AFC Championship win over the Colts. Underinflated balls are easier to grip and throw. The NFL launched an investigation, uncovering text messages between Patriots staff joking about deflation. The Wells report concluded Brady was generally aware of the scheme. The Patriots were fined $1 million and lost 2 draft picks. Brady was suspended 4 games, but won an appeal, playing the entire 2015 season. The NFL fought back, and his suspension was reinstated for 2016. He ultimately served it, returning to lead the Patriots to a Super Bowl victory. Critics argued science explained the deflation, and later reports suggested the NFL hid exonerating evidence. The league even changed its football pressure policies. Despite the controversy, Brady's legacy remained untouchable. Whether deliberate or not, Deflategate remains one of the biggest scandals in sports history. But let's go back in the day. The Green Bay Packers were kicked out of the NFL in 1922. The scandal started when they used college players under fake names in a game against Racine. At the time, college players couldn't compete in professional games. Reports surfaced that 3 Notre Dame players suited up for Green Bay, leading to an investigation. Notre Dame stripped them of their football letters, and the Packers were expelled from the league. The controversy nearly ended the franchise, but Curly Lambeau fought hard to get them reinstated. 6 months later, the league rebranded as the NFL and allowed the Packers back in. This scandal was a major turning point in the team's history. If Lambeau hadn't pushed for their return, Green Bay's football legacy wouldn't exist. The scandal also exposed the NFL's loose rules in its early years. Despite the controversy, the Packers became one of the most storied franchises ever. Their removal and return helped shape the NFL into what it is today. But this might be the craziest one. Bottlegate was one of the wildest moments in NFL history. In 2001, the Browns faced the Jags in a crucial late-season game. Down 15-10, Cleveland converted a 4th down with under a minute left. But after spiking the ball, the refs controversially reviewed and overturned the previous play, giving the ball to Jacksonville. NFL rules stated a review couldn't happen after another play was run. Browns fans lost it, hurling beer bottles and trash onto the field. Officials stopped the game early, but the NFL forced them to finish after a long delay. The game eventually ended with Jacksonville kneeling twice. Fans who threw objects were banned, and many stadiums stopped selling beer in plastic bottles. The incident also influenced new rules limiting alcohol purchases at games. Bottlegate remains infamous in Browns history, ranking alongside the drive and the fumble. The chaos showed just how much NFL fans can turn on officials in an instant. But let's move on. One of the wildest moments in football history happened in 1961. The Boston Patriots were up 28-21 against the Dallas Texans with 1 second left. Fans had already stormed the field, thinking the game was over, and officials struggled to clear them out. But when Dallas snapped the ball from the 1-yard line, one fan slipped through and ran onto the field. As quarterback Cotton Davidson threw to Chris Burford, the mystery man jumped forward and swatted at the ball. The play fell incomplete, sealing the Patriots' win. The next day, players watched the film and laughed at the bizarre scene. A rumor spread that the fan was actually Patriots owner Billy Sullivan because he always wore a trench coat. He never denied it, adding to the legend. Others think it was a bookmaker trying to protect a bet. Security today would make this impossible, but back then, it was just another chaotic day in early pro football history. But next, the Denver Broncos got caught in a major scandal in 2010. Their video director, Steve Scarnecchia, secretly recorded the San Francisco 49ers walkthrough before their game in London. When he showed the footage to head coach Josh McDaniels, McDaniels refused to watch it, but failed to report the violation. That mistake led to the NFL fining both him and the team $50,000. Scarnecchia had a history with Spygate. the infamous scandal where the New England Patriots illegally filmed opponents. Because of his past, the NFL even considered banning him from the league. The Broncos did not report the incident for nearly 2 weeks, and Scarnecchia stayed with the team until the investigation became public. The NFL confirmed McDaniels had no history of similar actions, but Commissioner Roger Goodell still punished him for not speaking up. This added to an already disastrous season for Denver, as they were 3-7 and had just suffered their worst home loss ever. After, though, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin was fined $100,000 for interfering with Jacoby Jones's kickoff return during a game against the Baltimore Ravens. The incident happened in Week 13 of the 2013 season, when Tomlin stepped too close to the field as Jones returned a kickoff 73 yards. While the league determined his actions violated the rules, they could not establish whether it was intentional. Along with the fine, the NFL considered docking the Steelers a draft pick. By the way, if you guys enjoy these deep dives, I'll be posting almost every day during this season and off season. I genuinely appreciate if you could subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, Tomlin called his actions embarrassing, inexcusable, and a blunder, admitting he should not have been in that position. He took full responsibility and apologized for bringing negative attention to the team. Despite the controversy, Tomlin and the Steelers quickly moved on, focusing on their playoff push. But this one is insane. On March 28, 1984, the Baltimore Colts shocked the sports world by moving to Indianapolis overnight. Former team owner Robert Irsay and Indianapolis Mayor William Hudnut orchestrated the secret relocation, sending 14 to 15 Mayflower trucks on a nearly 600-mile journey without warning. The move came after years of struggles for the Colts. After winning the Super Bowl in 1971, the team suffered 6 straight, losing seasons under Irsay's ownership. Attendance dropped from 60,000 to 42,000 per game, and legendary quarterback John Elway refused to play for them after being drafted first overall in 1983. When Baltimore tried to seize the team through eminent domain, Irsay made a deal with Indianapolis instead. The city had just built the Hoosier Dome, complete with blue and white seats, matching the Colts' color. In exchange for a $12.5 million loan, Irsay agreed to move the team immediately. In the middle of the night, movers packed up everything they could and left Baltimore, taking different routes to avoid detection. By the time the city woke up, their team was gone. The Colts' relocation remains one of the most controversial moves in NFL history, leaving a lasting impact on both cities. But how about one we all know? The Spygate scandal rocked the NFL in 2007. The New England Patriots were caught videotaping opposing coaches' signals, violating league rules. Head coach Bill Belichick authorized the recording, leading to massive penalties. The controversy began when the Patriots filmed New York Jets coaches from an unauthorized location on September 9, 2007. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell called it a deliberate attempt to gain an unfair advantage. Belichick was fined $500,000, the largest fine ever for a coach. The Patriots were also fined $250,000 and lost their first-round pick in 2008. The NFL demanded all related tapes, but instead of reviewing them, officials destroyed the evidence. This led to widespread speculation that the scandal was bigger than reported. U.S. Senator Arlen Specter criticized Goodell for covering it up and called for an independent investigation. Despite the controversy, Goodell ruled that no further penalties would be imposed. However, Spygate remains one of the most infamous scandals in NFL history. Let's talk about a player though. Patrick Mahomes admitted he went too far trying to draw a penalty. The Kansas City Chiefs star responded to accusations of cheating after a controversial play against the Houston Texans. During the game, Mahomes slowed down near the sideline, drawing contact from Henry 202. He then flailed his arms as he hit the ground, appearing to sell the hit. Despite the dramatic fall, the referee standing nearby did not throw a flag. Fans quickly called for Mahomes to be punished for flopping. Speaking on 96.5 The Fan, Mahomes acknowledged the officials made the right decision. The only one I felt like I probably did too much was the one on the sideline, where I didn't get the flag, he admitted. As Kansas City prepared for the AFC Championship game against the Buffalo Bills, Mahomes addressed claims that referees favor the Chiefs. The referees are doing their best to call the game fair, he said. But then there's this. Mark Schlereth, who played as a Denver Broncos offensive lineman for 6 seasons, was known for his role in protecting quarterback John Elway and helping the team win back-to-back Super Bowls. In a playoff game against the Kansas City Chiefs in 1998, Schlereth and his fellow linemen coated their arms and the backs of their jerseys with Vaseline. The Chiefs defenders struggled to get a grip on the slippery Broncos and quickly voiced their frustration to the officials. The scene was chaotic as officials rushed to the sidelines using towels to wipe down the greased-up Denver players during a game the Broncos ultimately won 14-10 on their way to a Super Bowl victory. Did I grease up my jersey and use sticky substances on my gloves? You're damn right, Schlereth said recently. What you call cheating is a fine line. It's an interesting line. What we did in the locker room is called being creative. Certain cheating is snickered at or even applauded. But how about just last year? Detroit Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams accepted a 2-game suspension for violating the National Football League's performance-enhancing substances policy. The suspension, announced on a Thursday, meant he missed Detroit's next 2 matchups against Tennessee and Green Bay. Williams released a statement saying the news was a complete surprise and that he does not take supplements, vitamins, or even over-the-counter medicine without caution. He emphasized that he has never taken anything to cheat or gain an unfair advantage, but understands he is responsible for what goes into his body. Head coach Dan Campbell expressed support for Williams, saying he trusts him despite the situation. Campbell stated that Williams has worked hard to improve and will have the chance to regain his footing. This suspension halted a breakout season for Williams, who has already set career highs with 361 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns through 6 games. Up to that point, it marks his 2nd suspension in 2 seasons, following a 4-game ban in 2023 for violating the league's gambling policy. But let's move on. Remember Textgate? Ray Farmer sent messages straight to the Browns coaches during game, breaking the NFL's strict electronic communication rules that led to a full-on investigation in early 2015. And the league did not take it lightly. The NFL hit Farmer with a 4-game suspension for the 2015 season, making it clear they weren't messing around. And that wasn't all. The Browns got slapped with a massive $250,000 fine for the violation. That's a serious chunk of change. This whole mess just added to the Browns' problems at the time. They were already dealing with major internal issues and non-stop front office instability, and this just threw more fuel on the fire. The franchise was already struggling, and this scandal only made things worse. When a team's general manager is secretly messaging coaches mid-game, it's a bad look for everyone. The league had no choice but to step in and shut it down fast. But remember when the Giants faked injuries? Over a decade ago, 2 Giants players blatantly faked injuries to slow down the Rams' offense. Deion Grant and Jaquin Williams dropped to the ground out of nowhere, forcing an injury timeout just as the Rams reached the 10-yard line. Everyone watching knew it was fake, but the refs had no choice. NFL rules require them to stop the clock for any injury, real or not, and they're not allowed to question it. This wasn't a new problem. Teams had been doing it for decades, taking advantage of a free timeout to adjust their defense. Former Bengals coach Sam Wyche even argued fake injuries should result in automatic touchdowns, but the NFL never gave refs the power to call it out. Instead, the league could only step in later and hand out fines. If the Giants planned this, the NFL should have made an example out of them. Let's go way back though. Back in 1963, the NFL dropped the hammer on 2 of its biggest stars for gambling. Paul Hornung and Alex Karras got slapped with indefinite suspensions for betting on football, something the league absolutely refused to tolerate. Hornung, a Packers legend, admitted to placing bets on college and NFL games, including his own team, though only to win. Karras, one of the fiercest linemen in football, also got caught making multiple bets, including one on the Lions. The league had warned them over and over, but they kept going. Commissioner Pete Rozelle wasn't playing around. He banned both players for at least a full season, making it clear that gambling had no place in the league. Hornung accepted his punishment, but Karras wasn't happy about it at all. They both eventually got reinstated, but their Hall of Fame inductions were delayed for decades. The wild part, the same league that once banned them now fully embraces sports betting, turning it into a massive business. But here's a recent one. The Falcons got caught pumping fake crowd noise into the Georgia Dome during the 2013 and 2014 seasons. The NFL found out they were blasting artificial noise to mess with opposing offenses while they were trying to call plays. That's a direct violation of league rules, and the league didn't let it slide. The NFL hit the Falcons with a massive $350,000 fine and stripped them of their 5th round pick in the 2016 draft. On top of that, they suspended team president Rich McKay from the competition committee for at least 3 months. Falcons owner Arthur Blank called the whole thing embarrassing and said the team took full responsibility. He promised they'd learn from it, but the damage was already done. Losing a draft pick and getting publicly called out like that was a brutal punishment. But let's go back a decade before that. Shawnee Merriman got hit with a 4-game suspension in 2006 for violating the NFL steroids and related substances policy. This wasn't some mix-up with supplements either. Both his A and B samples came back positive for steroids. That was a massive blow to the Chargers, especially since Merriman had just won Defensive Rookie of the Year and made the Pro Bowl the season before. Through 6 games that year, he already had 5.5 sacks and was dominating on defense. The suspension wasn't announced right away because Merriman appealed, but once it came down, it left the Chargers in a brutal spot. They were already dealing with injuries all over their defense, and losing Merriman made things even worse. On top of that, the team was dealing with off-the-field chaos, including multiple legal issues with players. It was a rough time for San Diego, and Merriman's suspension only added to the mess. But let's stay on the drug topic. Adderall has been a hot topic in the NFL for years, with players getting hit with suspensions for using it without proper approval. Richard Sherman even claimed back in 2013 that half the league was taking it. The drug is known for boosting focus and reaction time, which could give players a serious edge on the field. Deion Jordan got slapped with a 10-game suspension in 2019 for using Adderall without a therapeutic use exemption. Aqib Talib, Tyler Sash, and Kenny Vaccaro all received 4-game bans for the same reason in different seasons. Asa Jackson got hit twice. First a 4-game suspension in 2012, then an 8-game suspension the next year. The league does not publicly list which substances players test positive for, so some believe Adderall is often used as a cover-up. Most recently, Julius Wood and Marcus Bailey were both suspended for 6 games in late 2024 for violating the league's performance-enhancing substances policy. The NFL keeps cracking down, but Adderall remains a major issue. But remember Stickum? Back in the 1970s, Stickum was everywhere in the NFL. Players used the sticky, glue-like substance to improve their grip, and no one made it more famous than Fred Biletnikoff. The Raiders legend covered his hands, and even his uniform in the stuff to make catching passes easier. His teammate, Lester Hayes, took it to another level, coating his hands, arms, and jersey with Stickum. In 1980, he led the league with 13 interceptions and credited the substance for helping him win Defensive Player of the Year. The NFL wasn't having it. Before the 1981 season, they officially banned Stickum, creating what many called the Lester Hayes rule. But that didn't stop players from finding new ways to get an edge. After the ban, sticky gloves with tackified surfaces became the next big thing, and they're still standard for receivers and defensive backs today. Even Jerry Rice later admitted to using adhesives on his gloves, proving players never stopped searching for that extra advantage. But what about this? Back in the late 1990s, the Denver Broncos got caught bending the NFL salary cap rules. Between 1996 and 1998, they made undisclosed deals with John Elway and Terrell Davis to defer portions of their salaries. Deferred payments were allowed, but the NFL ruled these agreements weren't properly disclosed, raising concerns about teams skirting the salary cap. On top of that, the Broncos made secret guarantees on roster bonuses, messing with how they were accounted for. The league came down hard. In December 2001, the Broncos got slapped with a $968,000 fine. Then in September 2004, they got hit again with a $950,000 fine for violations during those same years. But that wasn't all. The team lost third-round draft picks in both the 2002 and 2005 drafts. These violations happened during their back-to-back Super Bowl wins, fueling debates about whether they gained an unfair edge. Let's go back even further again though. The 1925 NFL Championship is one of the most controversial titles in league history. The Pottsville Maroons dominated that season, even beating the Chicago Cardinals 21-7 on December 6th, making them the clear title favorites. But things took a wild turn when they scheduled an exhibition game against the Notre Dame All-Stars in Philadelphia. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets claimed territorial rights to the city, and despite warnings from the league, the Maroons went ahead with the game. NFL President Joseph Carr didn't hesitate. He suspended Pottsville and stripped them of their rights, including the chance to claim the championship. That opened the door for the Cardinals, who scheduled and won 2 more games against teams that had already disbanded for the season. One of those games against the Milwaukee Badgers was a complete mess, with high school players suiting up illegally. Despite all the controversy, the league awarded the title to the Cardinals, and even after multiple reviews, the debate still hasn't been settled. Let's go current day though. Travis Kelce had a hilarious mic'd up moment during the Chiefs' win over the Chargers in 2024. While running a whip route, he pushed off against Derwin James, and when James called for a flag, Kelce straight up admitted, "Hell yeah, I did," he told James, completely owning up. to the sneaky move. Kelce still had a solid night, catching 5 passes for 45 yards as the Chiefs locked up their 9th straight AFC West title. They improved to 12-1 on the season and kept rolling toward another playoff run. But how about this? Back in 2002, Broncos coach Mike Shanahan openly admitted to hiring lip readers to steal defensive signals. He even bragged about how effective it was, claiming his staff could crack the opposing team's signals by halftime. Sometimes, even by the end of the first quarter, Shanahan had someone with binoculars locked in on signal callers every game, giving Denver a serious advantage. Not everyone was impressed. Giants coach Jim Fassel wasn't buying it, and sarcastically said if someone was that smart, they should be curing cancer instead of coaching football. Whether it was gamesmanship or just trash talk, Shanahan made it clear Denver had no problem bending the rules to get an edge. But this is a recent one. In May 2022, DeAndre Hopkins got hit with a 6-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing drugs policy. He tested positive for Ostarine, a banned substance that promotes muscle growth and isn't approved for human use. The league doesn't play around with PEDs, and Hopkins had to sit out for nearly half the season. Hopkins denied knowingly taking anything illegal, claiming he was shocked by the results and believed it came from contamination. Regardless, his absence hurt the Cardinals badly. They struggled offensively and stumbled to a 2-4 start without their top wide receiver. But once he returned in Week 7 against the Saints, he immediately reminded everyone why he was so important, hauling in 10 catches for 103 yards. Despite the suspension, Hopkins still proved he was a game changer the moment he stepped back on the field. But let's stay on a similar topic. In December 2015, Al Jazeera America dropped a bombshell documentary accusing several athletes, including Peyton Manning, of using performance-enhancing drug. The report claimed that HGH shipments were sent under his wife, Ashley Manning's name, during his recovery from neck surgeries in 2011. The allegations came from undercover recordings of pharmacist Charles Sly, who claimed he worked at the Geyer Institute in Indianapolis that year. Manning wasted no time firing back, calling the claims garbage and completely fabricated. Then, in a major twist, Sly retracted his statements, saying they weren't accurate, and even asked for the report not to air. The NFL launched a full investigation that lasted 7 months, and by July 2016, they announced they found no credible evidence that Manning ever used HGH or any banned substances. Manning's legal team admitted HGH was sent to their home, but insisted it was prescribed to Ashley Manning for a medical condition. In the end, the league cleared Manning, and the controversy faded. But here's a crazy one. The snowplow game between the Dolphins and Patriots on December 12, 1982, is one of the wildest finishes in NFL history. A heavy snowstorm turned the field into an icy mess, and after 3 quarters, neither team had scored. The game was locked in a brutal defensive battle with no clear sign of a breakthrough. Then, with just under 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Patriots coach Ron Meyer made a bold call. He had Mark Henderson, a convict on a work release program operating the stadium's snowplow, clear a perfect kicking spot for John Smith. With a clean patch of turf, Smith nailed a 33-yard field goal, giving New England a 3-0 win. Dolphins coach Don Shula was furious, calling it the most unfair act ever perpetrated in NFL history. The league agreed that it wasn't a fair move and quickly banned snowplows from being used during games. But the Patriots still walked away with the win. But how about this? The Steelers-Raiders rivalry in the 1970s was as brutal as it gets, and no feud was nastier than George Atkinson versus Chuck Noll. It all started in the 1975 AFC Championship when Atkinson drilled Lynn Swann with a forearm to the back of the head, giving him a concussion. Then in the season opener the next year, Atkinson did it again, knocking Swann out cold and sending him off the field on a stretcher. Noll had seen enough. He called Atkinson part of the criminal element in football, blasting him for his dirty hits. Atkinson didn't take that lightly. He fired back with a $2 million defamation lawsuit against Noll and the Steelers, but the court wasn't buying it and ruled in favor of Noll. The drama didn't stop there, though. During the trial, Noll compared Atkinson's aggressive style to his own player, Mel Blount, which nearly led Blount to file his own lawsuit. This was peak Steelers-Raiders chaos. Here's an awful one, though. In 2007, Michael Vick's career took a massive hit when he was exposed as part of a dogfighting ring called Bad News Kennels. It all started in April when authorities raided his Virginia property and found over 70 pit bulls, many covered in injuries. Then in July, Vic and 3 associates were indicted on federal charges for running an illegal dogfighting operation, with horrifying details emerging about how losing dogs were executed. By August, Vic pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges, admitting to funding the operation and even taking part in dog executions. In December, he was sentenced to 23 months in federal prison, and the NFL immediately suspended him without pay. On top of that, he lost millions in endorsements and was forced to file for bankruptcy in 2008. After serving 18 months, Vic made his NFL comeback with the Eagles in 2009, won Comeback Player of the Year in 2010, and later became an advocate against animal cruelty. Now, in 2024, he stepped into a new chapter as the head coach of Norfolk State. But then lastly, a legendary one. The 1921 NFL championship controversy, known as the Staley Swindle, remains one of the most debated title disputes in league history. The Buffalo All-Americans look like the clear champions after finishing the season 9 wins, 0 losses, and 2 ties, while the Chicago Staleys sat behind them at 7 wins and 1 loss. Buffalo even beat Chicago on Thanksgiving, seemingly cementing their claim to the title. But things took a turn when Staley's owner, George Halas, challenged Buffalo to a rematch. All-Americans owner Frank McNeil agreed, but only as a postseason exhibition game. Buffalo played the Akron Pros the day before, then traveled overnight to face Chicago. Exhausted and missing players, the All-Americans lost 10-7. McNeil insisted it didn't count, but Halas saw an opportunity. Chicago quickly scheduled 2 more games, hoping to overtake Buffalo in the standings. They won one and tied the other, leaving both teams at 9 wins and 1 loss. Halas then persuaded the league to award Chicago the title, arguing that a rematch counted more than the first game. The league sided with him, handing the championship to the Staleys. McNeil fought for years to get the decision overturned, but the league never budged. The controversy forced the NFL to set an official season-ending date to prevent similar disputes. Had Buffalo refused the rematch, they would have been undefeated champions. Instead, their franchise faded, and the Staleys, who later became the Bears, kept the disputed title. If you guys enjoyed this, I'll be posting almost every day during the season and off season. I genuinely appreciate if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.